So welcome. It's good to have you here.
Good. And before we start, again, I want to thank you and AIM for all your help so I could learn imaging and ECM and build a structure and platform that carried forward. But none of that would have happened without you or AIM.
Well, you're very kind about that. I appreciate that. And
remember all those phone calls you used to get.
Yes.
What do I do now? on my single tiny little memberships.
Yeah, that was that business model. We should maybe figured out a different business model there to make better money on that.
At least off of me, yeah.
Well, for everybody that doesn't know George, let me start with just quickly on the show what we're doing here. It's the OxyMorons, and the idea is that everybody in this space talks about the importance of people, process, and technology, and the reality is that people are. I have a little bit of an echo on my side. Do you hear that? Let me just try something. Hold on.
I have too many echoes in my head.
The people talk about people, process, and technology. That's much better. And but we spend all of our time talking about the technology side and a little bit of process, and hardly ever talk about the people. And so
right.
This is not the show where we talk about stack diagrams and kind of all that stuff. I just want to help people understand kind of the people side of these equation, and how there are people who I would consider either practical dreamers or visionary pragmatists, whatever you want to call them, that manage to put together both a vision and the reality of implementation to make something actually happen. So those are the folks I like to talk to. For those of you that are new to this and aren't familiar with this, if you're on LinkedIn in particular, you can post a comment and I'll see it, and you can become part of the show and I'll publish it on there. So please don't hesitate to do that. And George has 30 years of experience in the public sector. He's got 20 as the ECM Director for New York State. And he basically initiated the largest ECM, Enterprise Content Management, implementation in state government. And the thing that I always admired about what George was able to do in New York is it was a true shared services approach. So, often people implement ECM, but they do it a la carte. They do it like a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here and a little bit there, and pay through the nose for each and every one of them, as opposed to thinking about this more strategically. And over the course of George's time there, the ECM implementation there went from one app to 50 apps. They've got 5 billion, I think it is, docs under.
It used to be 5 billion pages. It's more now.
They ingest 1.5 million pages of content per night, and they generate about $100 million in benefits. I got that right?
Yes.
So very impressive, when you think about the scale and you think about the integration and the benefits to taxpayers of saving some of this money by implementing this strategically rather than just a la carte. But that's not why I invited you here. And I teased you a little bit about this because I said you're kind of a little bit cranky about content management and, when people sell it short and stuff like that. But I consider that a virtue. I consider that a really good thing, to be a little bit cranky, because it's the sign that impatience, I think, is the sign of wanting to get something done. And so I really admire that. So without further ado, let me hop into my lightning round questions. And again, folks can chime in with a comment. Just post it, and we'll see it pop up on the screen in just a few minutes. Your favorite COVID TV binge watch?
Okay, we've gone through a few. The most current one is on Prime Video, called Captain Maru. It's a French murder mystery. It's very odd, very eclectic personalities.
Oh, is it a series?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll have to check that out. We haven't watched that. That sounds right up our alley. People hack into your Spotify playlist, and what would they find as a surprise on that playlist?
Things have changed. It's mostly podcast land. So playlists for music, not so much anymore. Unless I'm driving to Vermont and I'm popping in CDs. Other than that, it's how we built this.
And favorite book over the last 12 months?
For the technical side, it would be Digital Transformation by Lindsay Herbert. A more eye-opening one would be the book about the Spanish flu influenza. That is a sobering book that we lived through again.
Yeah, and we didn't learn anything much, did we?
No, the same stupid arguments we're having now, they had then.
Yeah, I was kind of that whole thing was just my son-in-law writes for Men's Health magazine, and he did an article on comparing 1919 to now, and it was very depressing. The stuff that we didn't learn in 100 years. But
nope, no, every pandemic you go back, it's all the same.
Yep. So as you and I should also point out that you had a really interesting presentation, I thought. How to pandemic-proof your client services. Do you have an objection if I post that in the article when I post this thing?
No, feel free to.
Okay, yeah, people should check that out. It's really interesting in terms of thinking about the opportunity that kind of the forced circumstances generated for us in terms of looking at some of these issues a little bit differently than maybe you had in the past. So you embark on this shared services journey in New York, and a lot of creativity behind the scenes that made that happen. And where did those ideas come from?
Looking at how people did work. Looking at people just schlep paper from person to person. And doing time and motion studies and seeing what was lost. Knowing that you could, if you turn those people into knowledge workers, stuff gets done faster, cheaper, smarter.
Did they find that threatening?
The workers? No. Management sometimes would, because nobody understood what could be done. When I started talking to you, imaging is something that happened at banks. Nobody was really doing it at the government public sector level. So it took a lot of lift and push to get things moving. Yeah, so, the first application was 100 people and $1 million budget.
So how did you, it's an interesting problem, because if management can't quite conceive of what's possible, it's hard to get them to sign on to what's doable. And how did you help them get that vision, achieve that, think about that?
You get the success. You get that one success. And you document what it took before to do the job and what it took to do after to do the job, and show the difference. Show the delta, show how that process improved, the number of people that you needed changed, usually typically lessened, and how much better they could do the job. When you know where everything is, you can do your work a lot quicker. You'll see stuff going out now because people are pushing business automation. 25% of staff's job is spent looking for information to do their work. Yeah, that was the minimum I would run into. I had cases where if you did a time and motion study, because that's the only tools you had available, 2/3 of the staff time was spent just getting information to do their job. That doesn't seem to be why people put programs in place. That doesn't seem to benefit the worker, and it certainly doesn't benefit the taxpayer and the people you're trying to deliver services to.
Did it ever get frustrating? I think about how long we've been doing this, George, and I was joking with you in the green room before we started this, and I said I was just at the MER conference, and I was listening to a session by James Watson and Rich Medina from Doculabs, and I was thinking, oh, good Lord, I've known these guys for 25 years now.
Yeah.
And it seems like we've been talking about some of the things for a long time. Does it ever get old?
It can be challenging. A no, you have to have the attitude that a no was just for that day, and you come back another budget cycle. Or always have your numbers ready. Always be sharpening your pencil and saying, well, we could do this as an interim step and then build to that. You got to realize when you're doing something like this, you're asking for resources that won't be available for something else. So you have to make the case. And you got the uphill push. You're bringing in the new stuff.
Yeah. You're the new kid.
Yeah. So you got to prove it.
And so when you did that first implementation that you used as the test bed, the seed to kind of, build the success that kind of went to the
Yeah.
next one, what was that first one in?
It was called, it was adjudicated hearing process. And people would have to come back and file. Their documents would have to ship from all over the state, be filed in a filing room, and we made it all go away.
So when you started this strategy of trying to leverage content capability across different agencies in a shared services context, I'm guessing that you probably ran into some turf wars and people that didn't want you to be monkeying around in their department. Is that the case?
Yeah, so initially what it was is there used to be Department of Social Services, and then they split it into two agencies, but you still had kind of sort of a common IT group. So we're able to build a shared service that way. So the one I was in didn't have the money. We'd go beg the other people for money, and we'd do things.
Back and
So,
forth.
but it goes to the other part, typically then an ECM implementation, your budget was 2.5 to start. When you got a small 10-person agent or program, they're not going to get that kind of money, even though 3/4 of their time or 2/3 of their time was spent looking for information. But if you made it a shared service on an existing platform, it was like 200,000. So it worked. Now, the big trigger for this was when IT was consolidated in New York State. IT got pulled out of all the different agencies and made its own agency. Now you just open the door for a shared service.
Right.
So we consolidated the teams. Most of the teams, we consolidated them and ended up with 50 applications and 100,000 users with 10, 12, 13 people.
So that's pretty high leverage there. So
and because you've been in this industry and you know what it's like, that team, once they got challenged, we set a standard, they had production uptime, 100% production uptime for 4 years until we moved. It all got migrated to an even bigger platform. So once you start digitizing people's workflow, you got to deliver it. You had better deliver it every morning. They don't want to hear about that you had a problem last night.
Yeah, with very, very high 99 point, however many digits it would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you went on that journey, without maybe naming names so that I don't get sued or anything like that, what kinds of people or what kinds of things annoyed you along the way that would tick you off?
It's like anything. You see an opportunity, you build that business plan, you make it solid, you make it a worthwhile investment, and you just sometimes have to wait your turn in the queue. Sometimes it's longer than you want it to be.
And were you ever frustrated that people would be picking other things that you could look at and think like, well, how on earth is that ahead of me in the queue?
It's a dynamic situation. You just keep negotiating and you keep delivering. If you keep delivering and then the program areas start talking to each other, we had cases where program would show up saying they wanted to do this and they had their checkbook open already. They knew it. So you got to build the rep that you deliver what you say you're going to do and you're not causing them pain. You're actually enabling their process.
And I think a lot of this was on, and this is not an endorsement or anything, although I like the company, but it's not an endorsement on an IBM platform, right?
Correct.
And then how did you use people from the company side to help you convince people on the public side of different ways? How did you leverage those resources?
They would assist. They want to help increase their market share, so they would do things. And when I had problems, I would always knock on their door and said, let's get this fixed. You want to make the next cycle, let's get this fixed. And they would do it. And we did some insanely courageous things together. I mean, somewhere in the early part of this governor's tenure, we consolidated all the accounts receivables, 57 agencies, into one application. And we did it in 4 months, maybe 5. That was just insane. But, you know, when the governor says you're going to do this, we go.
Well, and what was the key to getting that done? You know, because that's a recipe for the kind of project that winds up taking 2 years.
So when Governor Cuomo came into office, he chartered something called the SAGE Commission, looking for opportunities to create savings within the state. One of the things they elected to do was to pull all the back office operations out of each agency, because it's not really a core competency, and making it its own agency. And along came that was the invoice processing that all the 57 agencies would do. So they needed an application, and we were given the opportunity to deliver one in a ridiculously little amount of time. So we did it. And, you know, that just to talk about shared service and how it benefits, 57 individual accounts payable, some were manual, some were Excel spreadsheets, some were applications that had to be rebooted 2 or 3 times a day during prime time. Not good things. So what we did is consolidate all them. The business group knew their business plan, so that made life easier. They were a driven user, that makes life even easier. And we just built it. Now, what does that mean? Now the back office people, they know where every invoice is at every point in time. And in New York State, you have to pay your invoice within 20 days, or you get charged interest. So they would track that. They would know where they were stuck. From the IT side, you had probably 30 to 40 people supporting all these various accounts payable applications. When you consolidated it, this was just one of the 50 that my team of 10 or 12 supported, and all the other IT FTEs got released to do other things. So it's a huge win across the board.
Yeah.
And as far as 2 years to do, that's too long. This was lickety split. Move fast, move fast.
Did you worry about failing along the way? Or did you just plow ahead?
No, we just went. We had the support. We had capable people. Sure, there were challenges that you had to fight through, but you know, we were going to get to this goal and make it happen. So here's a takeoff. You talk about benefits. Everybody knows how government works. Government is the harshest to small vendors because your cash flow doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. But now, if people can track all the invoices and nothing gets stuck, it's easier for small vendors to deal with New York State government because they can get paid in those 20 days.
So it sounds like where does that sense of, okay, I've got this challenge, I'm not going to worry so much about failing, I'm just going to plow ahead, where does that determination come from?
You got to realize at that point in time, we had 10 to 15 years of doing ECM. So we knew how to do ECM.
So you had that core competency.
We had that. We had the team. We had the skill sets. This was just rather intense deployment. Right.
So it's a matter of harnessing and focusing those resources rather than creating them from scratch.
Yeah, no, not from scratch. We already had a reputation and a culture embedded into the team.
Tell me about the culture.
Take care of your customers every day. That's it. You know, that's what it came down to. We had to deliver information for people to do their job. We had to do it better than cable or electricity. And it had to be there 7 o'clock every morning, regardless of what had to happen at night. So it was just a killer. It is still a killer team. But if database didn't get their stuff done to 3 o'clock in the morning, well, we still had to do our testing and come up by 7.
So when you think about the future of this space, kind of, used to call it ECM, then we called it content services, then, a lot of different labels along the way and stuff like that. What do you see next in this space?
Honestly, with the scope and capability that's shown up during COVID, I think most public sector processing needs can be answered by it.
Mm-hmm.
It can. It's not just unstructured and structured information. You can bundle it into the business automation factory and run your processes with all your content, regardless of where it comes through. Pull out knowledge and information, drop things into the right repositories. And the bigger thing that's coming, which I know I wish I had earlier, was process mining. That is going to be remarkable. My adage has always been, paraphrasing Art of War, is you win a project before you start.
Yeah. You
win a project in the business case. And now with the process mining capability that's showing up, you can actually figure out what the process is. I can't even tell you the amount of times and months of my life that have been spent in rooms with people with sticky notes trying to figure out their process. and the staff saying, this is how it works. And the manager saying, no, that's not how it works. This is how it works. And how much time is spent here and how much time is spent there. And now with process mining, you can actually figure it all out, account for it. And oh, by the way, with some of these capabilities, you got digital twins, you can start fine tuning, build your almost wind tunnel on how you want the application to fly moving forward. So think of all the time that was wasted. I mean, in fairness, we would have users as we're getting ready for a deployment say, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to tell you about something. And it's like,
yeah.
Or nobody knew how long something took somewhere else, or how much time was spent manually doing something that, oh, by the way, you don't need manual switchboards anymore. We can do an automated switchboard to make it happen. Boom, done. So you can now, my take on it is you can potentially win a project before you even start, because you will have figured out the business process, the future opportunities, and you'll figure out how much risk you want to take out of the gate when you start. So I really am excited about that.
Wow, that's very cool. All right, one last question. I know you're a pretty humble guy, so I won't ask you what you consider your secret sauce. But if I was to talk to your peers, what would they say?
The team. It always comes down to the team. Teams and organizations win these.
And what kind of skills do you look for in your team? How do you? But let me flip it the other way. How did you know that you had somebody who was not going to be on your team?
They wouldn't show up. They knew the work we did. They knew how hard we worked. What was crazy is when I needed somebody would find a way to show up on the team. They would literally fire their previous unit and come work for us. But yeah, people who cared, people who knew they had to deliver all day, every day, and were relentless in solving problems.
Thanks, George. It's been fun.
It's always fun, sir.
Always fun talking to you. If people want to get a hold of you and talk a little bit more about this, or talk about, other state kind of implementations, how should they do that?
They can. I think my information is on the PowerPoint that you're going to share.
Okay.
Other than that, they can reach me on LinkedIn, and yeah, if you're in the public sector and there's anything I can do, just call.
Great. Well, thanks a bunch.
Really John, thanks for the opportunity. And again, thank you for helping us get here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks a lot, George. Take care.
All right. Bye now.